Hey everyone, and welcome to the You vs. Mind podcast. My name is Jack Leake, and I am super excited that out of all the podcasts you had to choose from, you chose this one, and you won't regret it. Here on You vs. Mind, we dive into the heart of the mental battle and provide you with effective strategies to fight, face-to-face, the things like stress and anxiety that plague us all, as well as looking into the root of the issue and digging up testimonies and stories from people and their bout with these trials. It is time to escape the lies we tell ourselves and take back what is ours. And my job is to make sure you don't do it alone. Are you ready? So Lauren, thank you for joining me. I'm super excited to have you here on You vs. Mind, and I'm super grateful that you're stepping forth and speaking for the masses. You know, not everybody is vulnerable or wants to be. So I appreciate you joining me and being willing to be vulnerable and in the anxiety that we all deal with. But we'll get to that in a moment. Lauren, just introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about you as a person and a little bit about your family.
Yes, thanks for having me. I am a middle daughter. I have an older sister. She's in pharmacy school. I have a younger sister. She's a junior in high school right now. Some things that I like to do would be cooking, going kayaking, different things like that, being outdoors, spending time with family and friends, really just trying to find different things to keep my mind off of school and work.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. You are in school, correct, at Labette Community College in Parsons, Kansas, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I know Lauren through school, not in the same grade, but went to the same school, grew up in the same hometown. So that's my connection with Lauren. So Lauren, now we'll dive into why I chose you as a guest, because you've had some struggles just like everybody else. So maybe describe to us the type of anxiety that you deal with.
Yeah. So a lot of the time what I do is I overthink things that I don't need to at all, or I think of the worst thing that can happen. So let's say I'm going in for class and we have a test. I will sit there and look at the question. I may know the answer, just overthink it constantly to where then I just stress about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Or let's say we have like a project in class, I start overthinking and stressing about, well, my partners, pull their weight. Will they help me out? Am I going to have to do this all on my own? And I'll just let it overwhelm me to the point where I don't perform at my best. And even outside of school and outside of work, if I'm hanging out with friends, I'll think, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, what if I get in a car wreck? And then I just start stressing like, oh my gosh, I can't drive. If this comes back on me, it'll be things like that. Even outside of school and work, I just expect the worst and I don't have time to enjoy the activities because I'm always thinking about other things than being in the moment.
Yeah. And that is so common. Like you could probably go up to 10 people every day, and each time 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 would say, I do that all the time. And the two who didn't say that are probably lying. I mean, that is so common. We can't necessarily control the thoughts that come in our head. We can control how we handle them and if we hold on to them. And so that's kind of where it becomes an issue. You mentioned, you said, I can't drive anymore. You let it affect your performance. And that's kind of where, we have to find strategies to step in and cut these things off as they continue to grab root in our brain. And so I'm victim of that as well. And I know a lot of people are. And naturally, Lauren, people find ways, like if you went to throw a punch at me, I would block it. Naturally, I'd try to defend myself from you. You're attacking me. So naturally, even if we don't have strategies to fight something, we naturally try to. So how have you found yourself, and you can talk on other things as well. I'm not sure if you see a counselor. I'm not sure your situation there. You don't have to tell us, but how have you tried to combat what you deal with?
So I think it was like my junior year in high school, anxiety really took over my life. I was never happy. I was always angry. I let it really consume me. But at the time, I didn't realize that's what it was. My mom and my dad had anxiety. He had seen a counselor when he was in college, and he noticed like I was getting really bad. So he mentioned to me, he's like, and they knew I had anxiety, But a lot of the time people would tell me, oh, you're a Christian, just let God handle it. And hearing that, I was like, okay, yeah, let God handle it. But sometimes just because you're a Christian, and yes, God can handle it, God can do miracles, but you also need something physical like on this earth at the moment. I went to a counselor probably for about 4 to 6 months, I would say. And I believe it was my junior year. She got to know me, found the things that I liked, things that I disliked. And we started finding strategies. So we kind of just sat down and was like, what could we do in the moment? And a lot of the time I would be like, well, I go to my Bible, or I talk to my boyfriend, different things like that. I would try to hang out with friends to distract myself. And she mentioned to me, she's like, don't always try to get rid of it right then and there. And I was kind of like, why not? Sometimes we have to realize, okay, we are stressing, we are having anxiety, we have to acknowledge it.
Exactly.
So she told me, just take 5 minutes, just breathe, accept the fact that you like this is happening, be okay with it, and then move on. A lot of the time I wouldn't want to be by myself. I would just feel more overwhelmed if I was by myself. So I'd go out to the living room with my family. I would go to my boyfriend's house, different things like that, to feel like, okay, someone is here with me. Someone is here that cares about me, and I am okay.
Yeah, that support system. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I have been told by my counselor, because I struggle with this as well. And I don't want people to get the illusion that I'm having you on here for me to fix you. That is
right.
That's not what I do. That's not who I am. This isn't my place. We are here to have a conversation and think through things that people are scared to talk about. So I just want to make my role clear that it isn't, I'm not higher than you trying to tell you how to fix your problems. We're battling these together. But that is exactly what my counselors told me too. Don't block out the fact, accept it, and think, okay, I have this stressor right now. I have these thoughts going through my head, accept them, and then let them float away. That is word for word what I've been told by my counselor as well. So it's super interesting to hear you say that too, coming from a different source than mine. But yeah, the mind is so powerful and it loves to create lies. You mentioned that you like to be in control, and that is where our brain loves to lie to us and give us all these facades that we think are true. And we'll dive into some of those here in just a moment. I hope you're enjoying this episode of You versus Mind. If you have questions or comments of any sort, please feel free to email me at jleake2015@gmail.com. That's JLEAKE 2015@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So yeah, one way that the brain likes to lie to us, and you mentioned control, is the mind loves to give us the illusion of control and certainty. And what I mean is about the future, because you mentioned that negative thoughts is something that you struggle with, thinking about how things could go wrong. And I'm a broadcaster. I do games. For those of you who don't know, I do sporting events on the radio for my high school. And so, I'm all about that. It's a performance-based, it's a live thing. So you better believe I struggle with that too. Thinking about what could go wrong, but we have no control over the future. All that we can control is right now. But the mind loves to tell us, no, you have to think about what could go wrong. And that's kind of part of that defense mode that we go into. We go into a natural defense mode and try to prepare for situations by thinking negatively. Also, a point I want to elaborate on is you mentioned, people saying, well, you're a Christian, let God handle it. That's great. And you said, yes, he can work miracles, but God also gave us these doctors and counselors. He gave us these things. And sometimes it's up to us to use them, use the things he's given us. And I think that you did that perfectly. But I'll turn it back over to you. You mentioned before we did this that some people would maybe call you out like for seeing a counselor. So just kind of walk us through how that went.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, I wouldn't want to tell anyone that I had anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was on medicine. So when I was seeing a counselor, I wouldn't do it during school times. That way, when someone asked where I went, I wouldn't have to tell them. I wouldn't have to make up an excuse because I didn't want anyone knowing that I was seeing a counselor. After I went through counseling and was on medication. I accepted the fact, okay, like this is what I'm living with. This is how it is. So then I became more open. Like people are like, what? You go to counseling? And sometimes people would be like, oh my gosh, you're just being dramatic. And telling someone with anxiety, like that's really hard to take. But then I also thought it's okay. They're probably hurting just as bad as I am.
Mm-hmm. And they're not doing anything to fix it.
Right. Like maybe they're trying to relieve their anxiety on me, but because I have help, I'm just going to take it and move on with it. And so that's something that when someone would tell me that, I would have to tell myself, it's okay. They're going through the same thing as I am. That's why they said it. And I started out like not wanting to tell anyone, but now I'm so open about it. Like I will tell anyone about it now.
I'm the exact same way, Lauren. And it's funny because that's the world that we live in, right? Like it's a performance-based world and you're expected to meet a certain standard when in reality, nobody's meeting the standard that they're setting for society. Like, that's exactly right. Like the first couple times you tell somebody, I see a counselor or what'd you do this weekend? Well, I had a counseling appointment on Saturday. They get the illusion, oh man, you have a big problem, when in reality, they should probably be seeing one too. And we're the ones doing right because we are addressing it. It's not like nobody struggles with stress and anxiety. So I commend you for being able to be vulnerable about seeing a counselor and kind of, we talked about our brain going into a defense mode and trying to come up with our own strategies to fight these negative thoughts. Kind of what is a product of, or the reason that these overthinking sessions take place in our mind is due to one very big thing. And right after this break, I'll reveal to you what it is. I hope you're enjoying this episode of You versus Mind. If you have questions or comments of any sort, please feel free to email me at jleake2015@gmail.com. That's JLEAKE2015@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Fear. Fear is the root of what we are talking about, Lauren, because overthinking is a product of fear of what might happen. There was an interesting study done, if you will, between doctors and these patients that were going into surgery. And they did this study over what they told the patients and their reaction to it. So they didn't say the number, but a portion of the patients, this surgery has a 70% success rate. And they were like, oh man, yeah, that's good. That's good. And they said, yes, we're comfortable with this surgery. And then they told another portion of the patients, this surgery has a 30% failure rate. And their reaction was, oh, heck no, I'm not getting this surgery. But it's the exact same failure rate that the people who said yes to the 70% success rate, they responded to the exact same numbers, just in a different context. So that kind of explains to you how the mind is developed. It's designed for us to protect ourselves when moments like this arise. And so I think that puts visually in your head a good example of why we think negatively.
Oh, for sure. I still battle with a lot of fear. Since I'm a Christian, I'm going to go ahead and talk about my religion. I used to be super scared about, oh, when Jesus comes back, when's that going to happen? Well, we don't know. So I would live my life constantly fearing that. And I got to talking to someone and they were like, if Jesus doesn't come back for another 10 years, you've lived those 10 years stressing, not having fun. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to learn to just live my life how it is. So whenever that was kind of going on about fear, I was like, well, then I need to get off my anxiety medicine. I'm just going to live life. So I got prescribed this medicine. And then later on, they were like, no, you need a higher dose. Well, I took it upon myself to cut back my dose on my own. And I was not the person that I was. I was always angry. I yelled at everyone, caused a lot of problems. Well, then when I told my family what I was doing, they were like, why? Like, why would you do that? I said, because I don't want to live my life constantly knowing the fact that I'm going to live with anxiety my whole life. And
that's good.
They were like, okay, but your medicine is here to help you. Like, you have that resource. And I was like, yeah, I have the resource, but I don't want to live with anxiety. And they said, but this medication is here to help you. And eventually we can get off of it. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. So I got back on the medication that I was supposed to. I was a lot happier and everything. And even now I still ask myself, I ask God, why do I have anxiety? Like, why is it me?
Mhm.
And a lot of the time my boyfriend would be like, because God knows that you can handle it. And I was like, but I can't. It's like, sometimes I just feel like I'm drowning. I can't breathe. I'm overwhelmed. And he said, but that's why you're here, so that you can tell other people that you're
Yes.
feeling the same way and that it's okay. You're not the only one. And so whenever I remind myself of that, I'm like, okay, yep, I have it for a reason. And if someone has a question, so that's why when you asked me to join this podcast, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Like, I have anxiety for a reason. And if I can help even just one person know that it's okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, and that's great. To acknowledge that is one, but to accept it, which you did, is a completely different thing that I have to commend you for, because that can be hard, because it's worldly things are things like medication. Oh, I have anxiety. Okay, take this pill twice a day for the rest of your life and you'll be fine. But I have to commend you for recognizing I don't want to struggle with this. I realize that maybe I'm struggling with it for a reason. God gives his toughest soldiers the toughest battles. But for you to recognize I can approach this thing on a level of religion, on a level of positivity, reaching out to other people. That's why you're on here with me. So God works in mysterious ways. But to just acknowledge those
For sure.
things is just amazing. People like to live how everybody else lives. And so for you to kind of reach out beyond that and realize where you wanted your anxiety to take you. I know that sounds funny, but you're using your anxiety to help other people. You're doing it right now, even if you don't realize it, talking to me on here. There are a few, I mentioned approaching it, or you mentioned earlier, actually, there are earthly things we can do to approach our anxiety. And there are a few really good ones that I'd like to share with you here after this break. I hope you're enjoying this episode of You versus Mind. If you have questions or comments of any sort, please feel free to email me at jleake2015@gmail.com. That's JLEAKE2015@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So the first strategy, Lauren, you kind of already uncovered for us. It's titled The Leaves on a Stream Mindfulness Exercise. And you told me earlier, your counselor told you, accept the thought and let it go on. That is exactly what this exercise is. And I'll just read a few of the key points on it. And again, I'm not preaching to you, but this is just for the audience. So it's called the Leaves on a Stream exercise for this reason. You're supposed to visualize yourself. This sounds corny, but it does work. Resting near a stream whenever those thoughts enter your mind, and you place that thought on a leaf and watch it float away on a stream. And to make it easier to get started, it's easiest to find a quiet place. You can sit down or even lie down, or if you're in a vehicle or something, take those deep breaths that you said you do and just slow down your heart, mind, and just your pace, and put that thought on a leaf and watch it float away down a stream. And that's just kind of a visual. You said this exactly earlier, of it floating away. So that's a good one too, that I'm not sure you've heard of or not. I don't know if you have.
I haven't heard it in that exact way, but that was a good way to put it. When my counselor would talk to me, she's like, sometimes I would have to do it physically. So a lot of the time people are like, but you don't actually give it away. And so at the beginning, I would have to do something physically. So, if we were having a bonfire at our house or something, I would write it on a piece of paper and just slip it in the fire. I would watch it go into
Yeah,
ashes. I would watch it go away. Um,
that's cool.
it reminded me of church camp a lot, when you would write your sins or your fears or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, and everyone puts them in the fire. So sometimes what I would have to do is do something physical to actually go, okay, it is going away, instead of just using my mind, because once again, our mind is so powerful. Sometimes I wouldn't believe that it was actually gone. So I would have to find different ways to see something disappear from myself to believe it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. The goal is to become aware of your experience during those thoughts and become aware of your thoughts, not to change or improve it. And that's exactly what you did. I mean, you accepted it. And I love that bonfire thing. Write it down and watch it, the ashes. That is cool. I mean, that is really good. And I like that. I'll probably use that too. And another good strategy is it's okay to, maybe think about a couple things that maybe went wrong in a day. I know I do that a lot, but it's good to put it in perspective too. I kind of did the math. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. And maybe think, Lauren, for you or for me or any listeners, something that maybe happened in a day, and that seems to be all we think about. I know you work at a coffee shop. I don't know, maybe a customer complained or something. Has that ever happened?
Yes.
And the mind likes to naturally brew on that. And let's say that customer complained to you about the food. How long would you guess that customer complained to you? 15, 20 seconds? I don't know. How long does a customer usually complain?
Oh,
This has a
not even
point,
a
trust
full
me.
minute. Yeah, it's not very long at all.
Not even a full minute. So we'll go with 45 seconds. Our mind loves to think about that 45 seconds all day long. Why think about that 45 seconds when there's 1,400 more minutes to think about? I just think that's an interesting perspective. Why do we focus on that 45-second controversy in the coffee shop and ignore the other 1,395 minutes in that day?
Yeah, that's
I don't
good.
know.
With my religion again, I think it's the enemy getting at us. People who
Yeah,
aren't religious may just say, it's your mind. But for me, it all comes back to religion.
yeah, I
The
agree.
enemy wants us to focus on the bad things.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the time we try to be perfect when none of us are perfect. So say that customer complains for me for 45 seconds, I'm panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all on me. But
Yeah.
all the coworkers that I have there with me, they're there with me too. And so what we do is we just make it right. If they didn't like the food, okay, what would you like instead? Um,
Mm-hmm.
if someone says, oh, this coffee is too cold, okay, let's make a new one and we'll get it better for you. So we turn that bad into good. And I think that's a lot of time what we need to do is, okay, so this is bad. What happened that was good? So a lot of the time people say journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, okay, yeah, you had a bad day, go home, take a journal, write down 3 things that happened that were good and focus on those 3 things. And a lot of the time that will change your mindset from a bad day to a good day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I've been told that too. Seeing something visually with your mind relays to your mind that it's much more powerful than if you just think it. Because look, we know what's right. Psychologically, we know this anxiety isn't right, and we try to come up with strategies. We know what direction we're supposed to go in that moment, but not always do we actually do it. We love to chew on it. And I love that you bring up your religion. I'm the exact same way. I'm a Christian, and I have I have many stories that just keep me believing because I've been through a lot, and I shared a pretty powerful story in our first episode here on the podcast where anxiety was just riding me hard, really hard. But every time, it's funny, Lauren, we get through it. God is there. And no matter what the problem is or how bad the peak was of the anxiety, I mean, you're sitting here talking to me, and there are moments in my life where not a life or death situation, but I had convinced myself, like, there's no way I get out of this. But yet here I am talking to you, and you're talking to me. So no matter the severity, God prevails.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the time when people start focusing, like you said, it's hard to get out of the situation. I would find myself like, I'm never going to get out of this. And when I actually talked to your girlfriend about it, she's like, but Lauren, you can, and you're already starting to get out of it by wanting to get out of it. And I was like,
Mm,
what do you mean by that? Everyone wants out of anxiety. And she's like, you've acknowledged the fact that you have anxiety and you're wanting to let it go.
yeah.
Now we just have to figure out how. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was like, do people not accept the fact that they have anxiety? And she
Hmm.
goes, a lot of the time people just try to get rid of it. And she goes, it's one of those things that you just have to know it's there and you have to get rid of it. So, I mean, everyone has different strategies with that. I haven't found a lot of time. I like to just listen to my worship music and, find that one song and put it on repeat and I'm good to go. But a lot of the time I really just try to turn the bad into good. And that's very hard to do. Sometimes I, can't do it. I'm just like, no, there's nothing good about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But when I really sit down, I'm like, okay, maybe there's nothing good about this situation, but what was good in a different situation?
Yeah, and what's funny is not everyone has the capabilities to, or they have the capabilities, let me take that back, but maybe not the knowledge to be able to process all of what you just told me. Because there are so many times where I'm in the middle of an anxiety attack. And I just look around at my peers in that moment, whoever it is, my friends, classmates, teachers, family. And I think, why don't they have this anxiety? Like, I don't see them in tears, or in another story that the listeners would be familiar with, I don't see them throwing up over anxiety. I don't see them pulling their hair out over anxiety. Like, why aren't they doing that? Well, you hit it on the head. Like, my girlfriend Isabel, that you were talking to her, like, you acknowledging it and being able to process it in a different way is what makes us special and sets us apart from the people who just want to put it away. And that's not the long-term goal. Just, you have to face it, and that's exactly what you're doing. And sometimes there are harder consequences for facing it, because it doesn't like when we take it head on.
Right.
So it fights stronger. So us being the minority, it feels like, of facing it, being able to process it on a level that makes it uncomfortable and arouses it even more, is great. So I love that you're able to process it in that way, and you're definitely on the right track. But Lauren, thank you so much for joining me. I love what all you touched on: religion, some strategies, and it was just a great all-around discussion. Thank you so much for being vulnerable. I know I've told you that a couple times, but it's hard. And so if there's anything else, any closing thoughts that you want to give to the listeners, please go ahead. But thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I just want people to know that it's okay to not be okay. And people always said that to me, but I never really understood it. I have a friend who's like, I can't tell anyone about this. Please reach out to people. You would be so surprised of how many people are going through exactly what you're going through or something close.
Yep.
Just, it's okay to reach out to people. 5 seconds of being uncomfortable is way better than 5 years of being uncomfortable. And that's what
That's good.
I really had to stick with. I'm like, okay, I've got to tell this person. Maybe it may be 2 minutes reaching out to someone. When I talked to your girlfriend about it, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want her to look at me a different way. But in reality, she was able to help me. Like, she had gone through things that I had gone through, and I didn't expect that. So if you just now it may not work the first time, but try it again. And so that's what I really encourage people to do, is talk to someone. It doesn't have to be a counselor. Just talk to a friend. Be like, I'm really struggling with this. Like, have you gone through this? What are ways that you could maybe like just talk about it with people? And if you are a religious person, a lot of the time I'm like, why is prayer not working for me? Like, I'm not feeling anything. Well, a lot of the time I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't really in the word. I was just praying, expecting God to do things.
Yeah.
So if people, if they have the same beliefs as me, really read your Bible and annotate it. I didn't realize how much annotating my Bible helped me. I color coded with highlighters, different things, wrote things down of what it meant to me, prayed, and I was seeing so much happen. Yes, I still have anxiety, and I'm probably going to have it for a very long time, but maybe not as bad. But really just acknowledging it. And everyone may be saying, well, yeah, I know I have it. That's acknowledging it. But you have to accept it, and you have to go, I may have this the rest of my life. So really just knowing that you have it, reaching out to people, and knowing that it is going to be okay. Life is worth living. One bad day could result in 3 good days. So never, ever, ever just ponder on that bad moment or bad day.
Yeah. The harder the anxiety attacks, and maybe the more often it attacks, more occasionally attacks, the bigger the smile on your face should be, because that means that you're closer to the finish line than it wants you to be, and it's trying to set you back even farther. So that's perfectly said, Lauren. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and God bless. Thank you for joining me for this edition of You versus Mind. My hope is that you are now more prepared to take on your mind when it attacks than you were at the beginning of the podcast. Podcasts on this show are weekly, so be sure and tune in next week for additional weapons to add to your mental arsenal. You can find You versus Mind on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I would love to talk to you and answer any questions you may have, or just have a conversation. Again, you can reach out to me at jleake2015@gmail.com. That's JLEAKE2015@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and God bless.